With the announcement of Flag Resynced, I have seen the same conversation pop up all over social media. Is it really that good, or is it just nostalgia? It's a fair question after all, because Assassin's Creed 4 is over a decade old, and gaming has changed dramatically since 2013. Open worlds are larger than they've ever been, RPG systems are deeper, graphics are more realistic, and Ubisoft themselves have spent years trying to reinvent Assassin's Creed in an attempt to keep the series fresh. On paper, Black Flag should feel outdated. It should feel like a stepping stone to something bigger and better, a product of its time that modern games have long since surpassed. Yet every time people return to it, that narrative seems to fall apart. Instead of feeling like an old game that's difficult to go back to, Black Flag somehow feels just as effortless to pick up today as it did over a decade ago. It never feels like you're forcing yourself through an experience because of sentimental attachment or childhood memories, because within minutes, you are completely absorbed again, wondering where the next island leads, what lies just beyond the horizon, or whether that ship in the distance is worth chasing. Nostalgia might convince someone to reinstall a game, but it can't make them enjoy the next 20 or 30 hours if the experience itself no longer holds up. Something else has to keep people coming back, and after replaying most of Black Flag myself, I think that answer has less to do with memory than it does with the game's remarkably timeless design. One of the biggest reasons Black Flag has remained so enjoyable is because it constantly captures something that so many other open world games have struggled to recreate. The feeling that an adventure could be waiting just over the horizon. In many games, traveling from one objective to another is little more than downtime. It's the empty space between the moments the developers actually want you to experience. A necessary inconvenience before the next mission begins. Black Flag turns that philosophy on its head because the journey itself becomes the experience. Setting sail isn't simply how you reach the next mission, it's an opportunity for something unexpected to happen along the way. A merchant convoy might appear in the distance, a storm could begin rolling across the ocean, a naval battle might already be unfolding before you have even arrived. You might even notice an unexplored island hiding behind a wall of fog, spot a mysterious ship cutting through the waves, decide to chase a collectible that catches your eye instead of continuing towards your own objective, or simply drift off course because something in the distance looks tantalizing. Every voyage carries the possibility that your plans are about to change, and because of that, simply sailing across the Caribbean rarely feels routine. Even when nothing major happens, the possibility that something could happen is enough to keep every journey engaging. It's a world that constantly invites curiosity rather than demanding your attention, and that subtle difference makes exploration feel spontaneous instead of scripted. The ocean itself plays an enormous role in creating that feeling. Even today, it's one of Ubisoft's greatest achievements, because it doesn't feel like a giant blue road connecting points on a map, it feels alive. The water constantly shifts beneath your ship, storms transform calm seas into violent battles for survival, towering waves crash against the jackdaw, and the Caribbean never looks the same for very long. The changing weather, the lighting, the distant islands on the horizon, and the sheer scale of the open sea all work together to create an atmosphere that encourages you to slow down and simply take it in. There are moments where you'll find yourself standing at the wheel with absolutely no objective in mind, simply enjoying the sensation of sailing because the world itself is engaging enough to make the act of traveling entertaining. That is a surprisingly rare quality in open world games, where movement often exists purely to bridge the gap between activities. In Black Flag, movement is the activity. The ocean isn't something you endure between missions, it's a playground that constantly rewards your attention, whether you're actively searching for adventure or simply letting the wind decide where you end up next. Of course, none of that would feel nearly as magical without the legendary sea shanties. It's such a deceptively simple feature, yet it's become one of the defining memories people have of Black Flag. Your crew doesn't sing because you've unlocked a special ability or triggered a scripted event. They sing because that's what sailors did, and in doing so, they transform what could have been a quiet stretch of travel into some of the most memorable moments in the game. Hearing Leave Her Johnny, Lowlands Away, or Randy Dandy O, echo across the ocean gives the Caribbean an unmistakable sense of personality. Before long, you find yourself deliberately collecting more sea shanties, not because they're required for progression, but because each new song makes every future voyage feel richer. The music creates an atmosphere that makes every routine feel memorable. The music creates an atmosphere that makes even routine travel feel memorable, and before you begin to realize it, you've started associating entire sections of the ocean with the songs your crew happened to be singing as you sailed through them. It's one of those features that sound insignificant on paper, yet completely changes how the world feels in practice. Rather than silence filling the gaps between destinations, the Caribbean feels constantly alive, filled with voices that reinforce the fantasy of sailing alongside a real pirate crew. It's the kind of reward that doesn't make you statistically stronger, it simply makes spending time in the world and the jackdaw more enjoyable, and that is a philosophy Black Flag embraces throughout its design. When you combine all of these elements together, something remarkable happens. Black Flag stops feeling like an open world game you're trying to complete and starts feeling like an adventure you're genuinely living. You're no longer thinking about the fastest route to the next objective because every detour has the potential to become its own story. A journey that began with the intention of completing a mission can easily end with you hunting sharks, battling a legendary ship, collecting yet another sea shanty. It even allows you to dive beneath the ocean for buried treasure, or even simply watching the sun disappear beyond the horizon as your crew sings together on the deck of the Jackdaw. Those moments aren't carefully scripted set pieces, they're stories that emerge naturally from simply existing in the world. They're personal experiences that belong entirely to you, and that's why they remain so memorable years later. That's the kind of experience no checklist can manufacture. It doesn't come from filling a world with more content, it comes from making every movement and moment within that world worth experiencing. More than a decade later, I still don't think Ubisoft has managed to recreate that same sense of effortless adventure, and I think that is one of the biggest reasons people keep continuing to return to Black Flag, while so many other open worlds slowly fade into memory. For years, Ubisoft has been chasing this same goal, making each new Assassin's Creed feel bigger than the last. Larger maps, more side activities, deeper RPG mechanics, countless weapons, countless armor sets, and enough content to keep players busy for hundreds of hours. On paper, that's exactly what you would expect from a franchise trying to evolve. More choice should mean more freedom, and more freedom should mean more fun. Yet despite all of those additions, the game that people continue to revisit isn't necessarily the largest or the most mechanically complex. It's the one where sailing between islands can be just as entertaining as completing a mission. It's the one where getting distracted doesn't feel like wasting time because the distractions are often more memorable than the actual objective itself. Black Flag reminds me that there is a huge difference between giving players more things to do and making them genuinely want to do those things. One philosophy values quantity, while the other understands that memorable experiences come from quality. The game isn't trying to overwhelm you with content at every opportunity. Instead, it quietly trusts that its core systems are enjoyable enough that you'll naturally keep playing without needing constant incentives to do so. That's why I don't think the conversation surrounding Black Flag should revolve around nostalgia at all. Nostalgia can convince you to reinstall an old game, but it can't carry an experience for 20 or 30 hours. The moment outdated mechanics become frustrating, repetitive, or even tedious, those nostalgic feelings can begin to disappear. We've all replayed games we adored as kids only to realize they weren't nearly as enjoyable as we remembered, yet Black Flag really never has that moment. Instead, it constantly reinforces the reasons you loved it in the first place. Within minutes, you're back at the helm of the Jackdaw. The sea opens up around you, a shanty begins to play, and suddenly the hours disappear without you even noticing. You stop thinking about whether the game has aged well because you're too busy just having fun. You're not analyzing every mechanic or comparing it to modern releases, you simply become more absorbed in the experience all over again. That's not nostalgia doing the heavy lifting, that's the result of mechanics, atmosphere, pacing, and player freedom working together so naturally that they remain just as engaging years later. Nostalgia might get you through the menu screen, but it can't make an outdated game feel this consistently enjoyable. What makes this even more remarkable is that Ubisoft themselves has spent the last decade trying to improve upon the formula. Assassin's Creed has become a Ubisoft RPG. Far Cry has grown into enormous sandbox experiences that feel duller than previous entries. Even their other open world franchises have tried to embrace bigger maps, larger progression systems, and endless checklists of fun content. Technically speaking, many of these games are far more ambitious than Black Flag ever was. But ambition doesn't necessarily or automatically create enjoyment. In many ways, the opposite has happened. As Ubisoft's worlds have expanded, they've often become harder to simply exist within. Activities start feeling like obligations. Progression becomes something you optimize rather than enjoy, and exploration slowly transforms into another checklist waiting to be completed. Black Flag avoids almost all of those pitfalls because its systems rarely feel like they're demanding your attention but inviting you in it instead. It trusts that the world is there to entertain you without constantly reminding you that there's another icon waiting to be cleared, another collectible to find, or another arbitrary milestone to reach before you're allowed to have fun. And I think that's why Assassin's Creed 4 continues to stand apart more than a decade later, and why it's the first Assassin's Creed game to get a resynced version of the game. It doesn't ask you to admire how much content it has or how massive its world is. Instead, it quietly focuses on something much simpler, making the next 5 minutes enjoyable. No matter what you're doing, whether you're chasing a legendary ship, diving beneath the ocean, boarding a merchant vessel you spotted on the horizon, or abandoning your main objective because you heard a sea shanty drifting across the waves. Whatever it is, the game manages to constantly reward curiosity instead of punishing it. Before you can even appreciate its story, its characters, or its atmosphere, Black Flag has already accomplished something far more important. It has convinced you that simply playing it is fun. That is an incredibly difficult thing for any modern game to achieve, and even more difficult to maintain that for over a decade. Yet Black Flag continues to do exactly that, and I still don't think Ubisoft has released or will release another game that captures that same timeless sense of joy. Bigger worlds may impress us for a few hours, but games like Black Flag remind us that genuine enjoyment doesn't come from scale alone. It comes from creating a world that's so engaging you never want to stop exploring it, and I think that's exactly why Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag continues to feel just as special today as it did back in 2013. Maybe Black Flag Resynced will introduce a whole new generation of players to Assassin's Creed 4, but after replaying the original, I don't think its legacy has anything to do with nostalgia. It's survived because it's still genuinely fun. In an era where Ubisoft has spent years making bigger worlds, deeper progression systems, and more ambitious open world games to varying levels of success, Black Flag remains the one I simply enjoy the most. It understands something that many modern worlds have forgotten. Players don't remember games because they had the biggest maps or the longest and most enjoyable campaigns. They remember how those games made them feel. And if a game released over a decade ago can still make getting lost at sea feel like the greatest adventure in gaming, then I think it's earned its place as one of Ubisoft's finest modern achievements. Not just because it was great for its time, but because it continues to prove that truly timeless game design never goes out of style.